Richard, let's sort of set the table here a bit, if we could. The president is in London. He landed just a few hours ago, 4 o'clock in the morning, kicking off a 3-day state visit. Then he'll be off to France to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day. The president, prior to leaving, he previewed his trip. Let's listen.
So we'll be going to the UK. I think it'll be very important. It certainly will be very interesting. There's a lot going on in the UK. And I'm sure it's going to work out very well for them. As you know, they want to do trade with the United States. And I think there's an opportunity for a very big trade deal at some point in the near future. And we'll see how that works out. Our country is doing incredibly well. Our businesses are doing well. We're going to clog up the border. We're going to stop the border. Mexico is making hundreds of billions of dollars for many, many years. And they have to do something about the border. Everyone's coming through Mexico, including drugs, including human trafficking.
About an hour from now, President Trump will receive a ceremonial welcome at Buckingham Palace, which will include a greeting by Queen Elizabeth and other members of the royal family. Tonight, the president will take part in the first state banquet hosted for an American president at Buckingham Palace since 2011. This comes, Richard, on Friday. Theresa May will step down as head of the Conservative Party amid a fight over Brexit. We'll get into this in a moment, but the president, hours before landing in London this morning, going after the mayor of London after the mayor criticized the president. There's a lot in the air as the president lands in London.
To Blake de Blasio, but shorter?
Yes, shorter than de Blasio.
There is a lot going on. He's going to a part of the world where he's had his worst relationships with the leadership of our Democratic allies in Europe. Few have been worse than his relationship with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. She is politically a dead woman walking, and she'll be out of her job pretty shortly. You'll have a new Conservative Prime Minister by the end of July, it looks like. Britain is in the throes of its self-imposed turmoil over Brexit. What to do about that. And then the president's added that some overlays, his involvement on behalf of Boris Johnson, one of the would-be prime ministers, his going after the Muslim mayor of London. So yes, there's lots going on. This, if timing was a lot in life, Willie, this is about as bad as you get in terms of timing.
And just a couple of days ago, the president of the United States gave an interview to The Sun in the UK where he weighed in on Brexit. Yeah. He weighed in on who should be the next prime minister.
And the royal family.
And on the royal family. The mayor of London, we mentioned, Sadiq Khan, wrote an op-ed in The Observer entitled, "It is un-British to roll out the red carpet for Donald Trump." He wrote, "This is a man who tried to exploit Londoners' fears following a horrific terrorist attack on our city, amplified the tweets of a British far-right racist group, denounced as fake news the robust scientific evidence warning of the dangers of climate change, and is now trying to interfere shamelessly in the Conservative Party leadership race by backing Boris Johnson because he believes it would enable him to gain an ally in number 10 for his divisive agenda." Before boarding Marine One last night, the president responded to the mayor.
No, I don't think much of him. I think that he's the twin of de Blasio, except shorter.
Amen.
And shortly before landing in London this morning, the president sent these tweets about the mayor of London. Quote, "Sadiq Khan, who by all accounts has done a terrible job as mayor of London, has been foolishly nasty," in quotes, to the visiting president of the United States, by far the most important ally of the United Kingdom. "He is a stone-cold loser," writes the president, "who should focus on crime in London, not me." In a second tweet, President Trump goes on to misspell Khan's name, writing, "Khan reminds me very much of our very dumb and incompetent mayor of NYC, de Blasio, who also has done a terrible job. Only half his height," he says of Khan. In an event, "I look forward to being a great friend to the United Kingdom and looking very much forward to my visit." This morning, a spokesperson for Mayor Khan said, "This is much more serious than childish insults, which should be beneath the President of the United States. Donald Trump is the most egregious example of growing far-right threat around the globe, which is putting at risk the basic values that have defined our liberal democracies for more than 70 years. Let's bring in from London, NBC News senior international correspondent, Keir Simmons. Well, Keir, that's how the president rolls into town.
Hey, yeah, you set it up well. We are here waiting for the president to arrive. We expect Marine One to land in the gardens of Buckingham Palace behind me there in around an hour's time. He will inspect the Queen's Grenadier Guards along with Prince Charles. The Queen will meet him later, perhaps. She is not with him for that inspection because you'll remember that last time he managed to walk in front of her, and that was one of the faux pas that was remarked upon during their previous visit. But of course, Willie, you know, the royal family are all about diplomacy. Nothing will happen on this trip that they won't be able to handle. The Queen has met with leaders around the world, leader of China, President Xi, the leader of Russia, President Putin. This will be all in a day's work for her. We're expecting an informal lunch here at Buckingham Palace. Included in that lunch, Prince Harry himself, after that row in the newspapers over what President Trump might or might not have said about Meghan. Then in the afternoon, the president will go to Clarence House to meet with Prince Charles. There, of course, that will be an interesting conversation. Prince Charles, of course, who has warned about the risks of climate change, who believes in organic food. Two men of the same age, but very, very different men. But again, Prince Charles will be the arch diplomat. And then this evening in the ballroom here at Buckingham Palace, an affair that perhaps only the British are able to put on, a banquet where every place is measured, every setting, every glass is placed in exactly the right position. The Queen will speak for 5 minutes, the President will speak for 5 minutes. If we get through today without any diplomatic incidents, everyone will breathe a sigh of relief.
We shall see. There's a lot of time left in the day, Keir. David Ignatius, just your broad stroke thoughts as we enter this state visit, the president's first actually official state visit. The last one was classified as a working meeting. Everything on the agenda, everything that's happened in the couple of days before the president left in that interview with The Sun, and now his back and forth with the mayor of London. How different is this from any previous visit for president going to the UK?
We think of the relationship with Britain and the United States as being one of trust, ancient ties, the wonderful spectacle that the British royal family can provide. The run-up for the summit has been one insult, gaffe after another. I can't remember a president setting the scene for a trip like this with as many negative comments. The question that we have to ask is, when the spectacle is done, it will be beautiful and impressive. What is the state of the British-American relationship? Is there the trust between the two countries, between their security services that there once was? I know many British officials, former officials, worry that Donald Trump represents a real break in the tone of the relationship, the way he interferes in British politics, tells the Brits who he favors for the next prime minister, for example. Those are very unusual things. So I think Trump needs a win. He's been going from difficulty to difficulty. We'll see if he gets the appearance of one in Britain, but I'd be surprised.
Anousheh, to pick up right there where David Ignatius is leaving off, I mean, is it possible for this president to come away with something that resembles a diplomatic win in this visit? I mean, as Richard Haass pointed out, the timing's a little tricky.
The timing is very tricky, and I think, Donald Trump couldn't have chosen a better country, because right now the Brits are in the midst of really a political paralysis and a constitutional crisis that makes America look like, and Donald Trump's controversies that he's leaving behind at home look pale in comparison. And, this is, as we were saying earlier, the lamest of the lame duck prime ministers that Trump could have chosen, with Theresa May stepping down just at the end of this week. But even though it's so important to demonstrate that the UK and the US's, quote, special relationship is still very much intact, there are key major foreign policy issues that the two countries really disagree with right now, with Iran, climate change, intelligence sharing over Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications firm. So there's a lot of things to worry about. And I think, honestly, Casey, every time the president is overseas, it's only a matter of time before he does something really extremely cringeworthy for all of us.
I wanted to ask David Ignatius, Jeremy Corbyn, who's not the favorite to be to succeed Prime Minister May. Donald Trump has weighed in here saying he may not share intelligence with the British were he to become prime minister. How unusual is that?
Extremely unusual, and I just would note that in the area of intelligence sharing over the last few weeks, there have been some extraordinary developments. The President has this year repeated his charges that the British Communications Intercept Agency, known as GCHQ, might in some way have been involved in bugging him during the campaign. Devin Nunes, who's a key ally of the President in the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee, has sent a letter really quite specifically raising questions about whether British intelligence was working to subvert or investigate the president's campaign. This is a relationship that is one of historically absolute trust. It's the most important alliance that the U.S. has. And I think this is part of why the ground underneath this formal visit full of great grand events, you have to really wonder whether there's something that's beginning to get shaky. We'll see whether the president makes these intemperate remarks. The Brits take them very seriously. Every time they hear the president criticize one of their institutions, support or denounce one of the politicians, that upsets a lot of British people.
I agree, but to me, the most interesting part of this visit is the context. You just had the European elections. The Conservative Party came in fifth in the elections. The Labour Party came in third. You have the leading parties of Britain that have run this country since World War II are both extraordinarily divided, fundamentally divided over Brexit. You have the emergence of all these different parties all across the political spectrum. It's quite possible in 10 years there will not be a United Kingdom. I can see scenarios where if Boris Johnson becomes prime minister, you end up with what's called a no-deal Brexit. I could see ultimately Scotland going its own way. I could see Northern Ireland going its own way. This is a country called the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It's on its way, in some scenarios, to becoming Little England. So Donald Trump is going to be there for a couple of days. He's going to roil the waters. But even without Donald Trump, this is a country that is facing essentially an existential crisis as to its identity, even its basic composition. This is what he's wading into, throwing rocks in the pond of the royal family, the mayor of London, and the conservative sweepstakes.
Yeah.
What are the stakes, the national security stakes for the United States if that happens? And how is Trump contributing to that, if at all?
Well, he's contributing to it in some ways by supporting Brexit, by trashing the EU. The special relationship, as David was saying, has been one of the cornerstones of American foreign policy since World War II. When we have a crisis, one of the first things the President of the United States, any President of the United States normally does, is picks up the phone and he talks to the Prime Minister in the UK. Well, that's not so clear anymore. Also, we always were close to Britain in part because they were such an important voice in delivering Europe. They were our best voice inside Europe. Well, if Britain now exits Europe, which is quite possible, then we no longer have that voice, that leverage. So we have a relationship with Europe and we have a relationship with the UK, and therefore we've lost an important form of connection. So this is significant at a time already the U.S.-European relations are so troubled.
Yeah, David, Brexit is a problem Theresa May could not solve, and it's not going anywhere when she walks away on Friday, obviously. It'll be there for the next prime minister.
Brexit has been, in a sense, from out of nowhere. Who would imagine 5 years ago that Britain would be leaving the EU? Truly an existential crisis. What's striking to me is in this relationship, which is supposed to be the very closest alliance the United States has, Britain would reasonably expect in its time of troubles help from the United States in terms of steadying the situation, being supportive, not rocking the boat further. And instead, what they get from Trump is the ultimate boat rocker, a guy who jumps in and declares which candidates he likes and which ones he doesn't, and picks a fight with the mayor of London. I think that's the part that's really troubling. This alliance was built on mutual assistance. We're going to celebrate in a couple days. Americans dying on the beaches, in part, to help liberate Britain and Europe from tyranny. How far we've come from that situation, and one in which the president spends his mornings insulting the mayor of London.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.